Hello and welcome to the Natural History Museum Live. My name is Josh and today we are giving you a sneak peek at the museum's latest and biggest exhibition, Titanosaur, Life of the Biggest Dinosaur. Now today is live, so if you have any burning questions that you want answering as we go around the exhibition over the next 20 minutes or so, then don't forget to pop them in the chat box and we will do our best to answer them as we go. Now, without further ado, let's get on with it. Let's go and meet our experts for today. So we are being joined by Professor Paul Barrett, who is a dinosaur expert, specifically of herbivorous dinosaurs, like this massive one, and Sinaéd Marron, who is the exhibition lead, who helped to bring it all together. And so here they are under the amazing animal itself. Hi, Paul. Hi, Sinaéd. How are you doing? You're both all right. I guess to start with, we might as well address the dinosaur in the room and talk about this amazing Titanosaur. So I guess, Paul, can you give us a bit more about, what it is we are looking at and sort of what it was like when it was alive, I guess?
Sure, some basic facts and figures. So Patagotitan is what we call a sauropod dinosaur. That's a family of dinosaurs with these huge barrel-shaped body, propped up at each corner by a sturdy column-like limb, huge long neck out one direction, huge tail in the other direction. It's the same group that our much beloved Diplodocus, Dippy, also belongs to. So these are animals that are very common during the age of dinosaurs, but the one we're standing under now was around in the Cretaceous period, so about 101 million years old, and it's a contender for the largest dinosaur, indeed the largest animal on land that has ever lived at all time. So 37 meters long and possibly up to about 60 tons.
Whew, that's huge. And we yesterday we asked our audience a sneaky teaser question about how many London buses. Are you able to give us the answer to that?
Yes, so it's 3 London buses.
3 London buses. Wow. Okay, that's incredible. And obviously it is, huge, Sinaéd. So it must have been a very big job to bring this here. I was just wondering if you could talk us a bit more about sort of where it's from and how you managed to pull this all together.
Absolutely. So what we're standing underneath is a replica, although we've got some of the real amazing fossils from this creature earlier on in the exhibition. And this replica was made by the museum in Argentina that holds the real fossils. And what they did was they scanned each one of the 280 bones that they found at the site and carefully built a 3D model and then made replicas of each of those bones out of polyester resin and fiberglass and mounted them on this steel structure. And even though they found 280 bones, they didn't quite find every bone. So the parts that weren't found, they've modelled based on really closely related titanosaurs.
Amazing. And I think I read somewhere the cast alone weighs something like 2 tons or something.
Yeah,
something
it's
like
over 2 tons.
That blows my mind. And don't forget, if you have any questions for Sinaéd or Paul as we're going around, then put them in the chat box and we'll try and answer them. I think one of my favourite things about the whole exhibition is that you can get obviously up and under it and see it. And I was like, was that important when you were designing the exhibition?
Yeah, I think what we really want is for people coming to the exhibition to experience the same sense of awe and wonder that we feel standing under this amazing animal. So I think that was a real part of our planning process, was to make sure that could happen.
Amazing. You mentioned before about the casting of the bone. I mean, it is all accurate and completely lifelike, is that correct?
Absolutely, the detailing on each of the individual bones, although they're replicas, is amazing. So you can go in, you can look at the kind of little ribbly bits on the edges of the bones where the cartilage would have attached in life. You can see the texturing on the edges of the bones that once upon a time muscles would have been attaching to. So it's a really detailed, great replica that's of research quality, really.
Wow. That's really cool. I mean, is that what this is? Is this where the sort of the cartilage and things?
That's exactly right. So that very wrinkled texture is where the pitted area that forms a nice big junction point for all the cartilage to cap those bones to make that joint a little bit more slippery and easy to use.
I guess obviously it was so big, its legs were very important in sort of propping it up. And I mean, I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about how that functioned.
Yes, so these animals essentially are fighting gravity. So they're having to hold up this enormous weight against the force of gravity, constantly trying to pull them down. So these big legs, both the hind legs here and the forelegs, are acting as columns. So they're tucked up underneath the animal and offering a lot of support. And also, something you get as when you only really appreciate, I think, when you're underneath it, is just how wide the animal is as well.
It's huge.
Its hips are very, very wide, so it's unbelievably stable as well, which seems to be another feature that might have allowed it to reach this large size, this kind of very boxy, stable design that it has.
We've had a couple of questions through already. Thank you very much. Duncan wants to know what was bigger, the Titanosaur or the blue whale?
It's a great question, Duncan, actually. So, the blue whale is the largest animal of all time, and really big ones do put Patagotitan a little bit in the shade, weighs a lot more, well over 100 tons. But equally, whales cheat. They cheat because they don't need to hold their weight up, because the water holds them up. So they don't need to do any work really to do that. So, but interestingly, our blue whale, Hope, is actually not a full-grown blue whale and is 10 meters shorter than Patagotitan.
That's exciting. Another question, how can we tell how much it would have weighed when it was alive?
So there are various different ways we can tell that, but usually we rely on measurements from the hind limb bone, from what we call the femur, the thigh bone, because actually in living animals there's a really good relationship between the size of that bone and the weight of the animal that it's carrying. So by few relatively simple measurements of the thigh bone, we can actually work out what the animal weighed. And then there are other things we can use as well. We can make a 3D wrap, if you like, of the skeleton, and work out how much the animal would have weighed from that too. So there are different ways we can get at that question.
Nice. And we are going to move on now. So we obviously this amazing cast that you can touch as well, but there are lots of other little casts around. And so we're going to go this way and see another one where you can get right up and close to its skull, which is, you know, obviously huge, massive thing. I was wondering if we could just talk a bit more about its adaptations. You know, what is the skull? What does it show?
So the one bit of Patagotitan that we know very little about, unfortunately, is actually the skull. So although we had those 6 individuals rammed together in this one quarry where all the bones were found, only a single tooth of a Patagotitan was found in that. But luckily, there are close relatives of Patagotitan that do have nice skulls. And this is one of them. So this is based on an animal from Brazil called Sinaéd, which has a beautifully complete skull, an animal quite a bit smaller than Patagotitan. So we took that skull, got a 3D print of it, and then made it the right size to fit with Patagotitan's body.
Because obviously, I mean, I think one of the striking things is obviously how, you know, it's got a big mouth and it's got a big body, but its actual sort of brain must have been quite tiny, I guess, in comparison.
Absolutely. This isn't like doing any times crossroads in any hurry very quickly. This is an animal with a brain probably about the size of a grapefruit. And that brain is making all the rest of the animal work. And we get hit up a lot on things to do with large size. We're kind of biased because humans are quite brainy. We have brains that are much larger than they would be in most animals of our size. But all you really need to be able to do as an animal like this is to go around, find your plant food, avoid being eaten, avoid tripping over, and find other Patagotitans to make baby Patagotitans with, and then you're succeeding at life.
A very simple life, I guess, to a certain extent. And Sinaéd, obviously you can touch it and things like that, and I was like, how did you build that into the exhibition, and sort of why did you want people to be able to do that, I suppose?
Yeah, I think obviously, as Paul said, one of the really important things about these animals was how they ate and how much they ate. And so we wanted to bring a head down at touchable height so that we could have a good look at it, because the head up there is a little bit difficult to see. And we wanted to really have a look at its teeth, because its teeth were a really important part of how it ate. And this was a kind of, it raked. It would have raked the food off plants and tugged the leaves off whole, rather than say like biting or chewing them.
So it would have been. It doesn't have any other teeth, does it? These are the these are the only ones.
No, so it's raking food off and then swallowing it whole, which is quite an efficient way of eating.
Yeah, just sort of getting on with it. And I guess that also explains why it's got such like a big. I keep on wanting to say muzzle, but it's not really a muzzle, is it?
You can call it it's not a muzzle or a snout, so it's quite wide from side to side. But even so, it's still quite small in comparison with the rest of the animal. And this is something that it has to eat a lot to keep going. And it has a relatively small mouth through which it's constantly having to push that plant food.
We've had another couple of questions through, one relating to how it was eating. David asks, does the shape of the upper and lower jaw suggest anything about the way it ate?
So the upper and lower jaw are both quite rounded, but it's also quite broad. And we think Patagotitan is something what we call an unselective feeder. It's so big, it's probably just having to eat anything it can to keep going. So fairly broad snouts suggest that they're kind of just using their head to hoover up big bites of vegetation.
And related to that, we also have over here a selection of, again, fossil casts that you can touch. of the types of plants it would have been eating, right? So I was wondering if you could.
Exactly right. So what we've got here are a selection of the plants that were living around in Patagonia at the same time that Patagotitan was wandering around. And if you were transported back there in time, the first thing you'd notice is that it's very green. There are flowering plants, but not very many of them. So there'd be splashes of colour, but it's mainly a very green world, made up in particular of trees that are quite familiar to us today. They're things like monkey pozzles and other types of conifers. So they're the main types of plants that we see around. And then at ground level, there's no grass. Grass really isn't important at this time in Earth history. Instead, lots and lots of ferns and horsetails, and Patagotitan would have been feeding on all of these.
And that is related to all this amazing artwork, which is throughout the exhibition. It's just truly like beautiful and almost whimsical. I love it. And Sinaéd, like this was like a really important integral part, wasn't it, in like how the exhibition was designed and what it's meant to show.
Absolutely. We really wanted this exhibition to feel like a different kind of dinosaur exhibition that's a little bit different from what people might have seen before. And we're really playing with this idea of using our imaginations to fill in the gaps in what we don't know. So we obviously have amazing fossils, but we don't know everything. And scientists themselves have to take the fossils and take the evidence that they find and use their imaginations to try and think about what that world would have been like. So each of these individual trees and animals was hand-drawn by the design team here at the Natural History Museum. And we had quite a lot of consultations with Paul on the animals and also with another colleague in paleobotany to make sure that what we were drawing was, whilst it's this sort of loose illustrative style, it's really accurate to what would have been there at the time.
I think it's really lovely. And you were saying before about how sort of even the placements of the plants in the landscape is as accurate as we could possibly make it, basically.
Exactly. So we've been quite careful to make sure that the certain types of plants that would have grown alongside each other are in the right places, and that ones that needed water are by a pool of water and things like that.
Obviously now we've seen what the Titanosaur was eating, and one of the fun things about this exhibition is you can follow it on its journey through the Titanosaur, basically. So if you follow us this way, we can go over to what I'm endearingly calling the digestion station, in which you can follow the food as it goes through the giant Titanosaur. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we wanted to show here is how all of that food made its way through the enormous guts that this animal would have had. One key thing is that Patagotitan swallowed all of its food whole, so it would have had to spend a long time in that digestive tract to break down and to squeeze all of the energy out of it. So yeah, have a go.
No,
squeezing the food through the system.
No, I'm greatly enjoying this. And when it comes to how much food it was eating, it was eating a lot of food, right, Paul?
It was. So just to keep going, we calculate that this animal's eating about 130 kilograms of food every day. Every day of the week, it's going to have to find that much food just to survive.
It's not just about the digestion either. We also have, for example, this life-size heart. We had a question through about the Titanosaur and its blood, I guess. It says, could the Titanosaur hold its head up high? Did its heart pump blood upwards?
Sure, so it's a really good question. So yes, we think the Titanosaur could raise its neck up higher and probably feeding on things quite a long way up in the trees, up to 10 meters over ground level. And that does make this problem of the heart has to work again against gravity to get it up. So we think that first of all, they have very strong, large hearts. In fact, think the heart was probably about 150 kilograms in weight in this animal. And also they might have had other things going on within the neck that stopped the blood flowing backwards in between heartbeats. A few other things that they might have been doing along the lines that giraffes do today.
Nice. And obviously the Titanosaur was enormous, but it was also being was that to protect it from predators, or was that to protect it from, because of the food it was eating?
We don't really know why it got so big. So there are a lot of big dinosaurs, but these Titanosaurs are amazingly bigger, even those biggest dinosaurs. So we're talking about animals that weigh kind of 4 times more than Dippy the Diplodocus. So these are animals that we really don't understand why they took that extra step of getting so much bigger. So we think that large size in dinosaurs, at least in the plant-eating dinosaurs, is actually to do with eating plants. It's to make their bodies into big fermentation chambers to deal with this hard to digest food. And then you get large predators that evolve to prey on those large
is
herbivores.
Perfect segue to this amazing, another amazing skull we have here. So this is one of the predators that would likely have been preying on the Titanosaurs, is that correct?
Yes, so this is a replica skull from a Titanotitan. So we can think about Tyrannosaurus rex. It would have been a similar creature, but living in Cretaceous Patagonia.
Amazing. And I believe they found the teeth of the Tyrannotitan with the fossils of the Titanosaur. Is that right?
That's right too. And in addition to that, we also have at least one of the bones from the Patagotitan shows a very clear tooth mark. So at least one of those bones got chomped on by a large predator at some point, though we're not sure if it was attacked when it was alive or if this is something that happened as the animal gnawed on its bone after it had already died.
And we have a question related to this. It says, they ask, were herbivores always bigger than the carnivores?
In general, herbivores are usually bigger than the carnivores they're related to. So if you think about the biggest animals on land today, they're all herbivores: elephants, hippos, rhinos, things like that. So herbivory generally has been thought of evolutionary as one of the things pushing some animal groups towards larger size.
And we have another question through from Jax, which is sort of related to what we've just seen, and it was, how long does it live, and does it have a slow metabolism?
So actually, we don't know exactly how long they live. We know how long it took them to grow up. So we know that Patagotitan grew very, very quickly. So we know it reached this enormous size in probably about 30 years. So after that, though, we're not quite sure how much longer it would have stayed alive. We think probably these animals that might have topped out at around 50 or 60 years old. So certainly not hundreds of years or anything like that, but still a good age, similar again to some large living animals today.
Sort of related to that, Emma Caton has asked, first of all said, amazing, do we know how big the newly hatched Titanosaur was? So the opposite side, a baby dinosaur.
We do. So we have in the exhibition a Titanosaur egg, which gives us a good idea about how large the little hatchlings were. So a Titanosaur egg was only about 15 centimeters across, and when they hatched, they were probably not that much different from a human baby. So to go from that size to this size in just 30 years is quite incredible.
That is amazing. We have another question through, which is relating to the skull, which we saw earlier. Claudia asks, why are the orbital fenestra so large? What do we know about its vision?
So we don't know that much about vision in these animals, unfortunately. They do have very large eye sockets, and in living animals, there is actually a relationship between the size of the eye socket and the size of the eyeball. So they probably had quite good-sized eyes. They wouldn't have had binocular vision like we do, so the eyes are sort of looking slightly facing in different directions, so a little bit of overlap at the front, but a little bit more like thinking about a cow or a sheep, where it has its eyes more or less looking more to the sides, which again makes sense as a herbivore, keeping an eye out for possible predators around it.
And another one that's sort of related to the bones and what we can tell. So David asks, the posture of large dinosaurs seems to have been shown in several ways over the years, with necks like swans or else heads low down. How confident are you on the posture of the current display?
Well, there was a bit of a mix here, wasn't there? So there's a practical consideration, and there's also a kind of, if you like, a scientific consideration. I don't know if you want to talk about the practical side of it.
Yeah, so practically, we obviously had to fit it in this amazing gallery space. So whilst we know that this animal could have reared its head up to quite, 10 meters or more, we decided to display it as if it was walking, so with its head level, partly so that we could fit it within this space.
I mean, the scientific answer is it's probably using its neck in a number of different ways. So we do think it would have been able to lift its head up. We don't think it would have kept its head up all the time, because that would have put a lot of strain on the heart in terms of constantly pumping blood up, but that doesn't mean it couldn't do it for short periods while it's feeding or looking around. And also we have to remember the neck goes down as well. This animal has to drink. So again, the neck has to also move around. So it's actually quite flexible up and down from side to side. The one thing that you often saw in old books with this kind of swan-like neck has generally been abandoned, though, simply because when we look at the necks in a lot of detail, you actually have to break them to get them into that kind, which generally isn't very good for an animal.
Probably didn't happen in life. And it's not just obviously, interactive things that you can touch and things. And we also have some amazing sort of games that we have been developed. Such as this. This is probably my favorite one. This is one where you can either play as the Titanosaur or the predator, and you basically have to try and eat a baby Patagotitan, which is quite fun.
Yeah, so we're looking here at some of the different ways that Patagotitan would have defended itself. So we're looking at things like alarm calls. One of the really interesting things.
Behavior, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But also one of the amazing things from some sauropod trackways that we know is that it seems like younger individuals sometimes walk towards the centre of a herd. So also, yeah, those kinds of behavioural evidence. That's kind of behavioural evidence. So yeah, here we're pitting potential predators against potential defensive manoeuvres.
We have another question, probably the final question. Do we have any idea what these animals would have sounded like?
Oh, we don't, but many large animals today, there is a relationship between the sorts of sounds they make and size, which actually makes a little intuitive sense if you think about high-pitched squeaks you get from a mouse versus the low rumbles in an elephant. So these animals are probably using quite deep pitch noises, and it could be that we wouldn't so much hear those sounds as feel them. So they might have been using something called infrasound, very low sound waves to communicate with each other. And when we peer into the ears of sauropod dinosaurs, we find that they seem to have ears that are adapted for not adapted for high frequencies at all, but seem to maybe be specialists for these kind of very low rumbling noises.
And before we head off, I mean, Sinaéd, how long is the exhibition open for? And, you know, where can people?
Yes, the exhibition opens tomorrow, excitingly, and it's on until January 2024.
Amazing. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for today. I just want to say, first of all, thank you, everyone, for watching, and thank you for sending your questions. We're sorry if we couldn't get to them in the end, but if you want more information about Titanosaur and about this amazing animal, then you can check the links in the description below. And if you want to buy tickets to come and see this genuinely incredible cast, I might be slightly biased, but those are also available in the description below. If you enjoyed what you saw today, having a chat with our experts behind the scenes, then we have a YouTube series called Hidden Treasures. The next episode for that is out on the 11th of April at 12:30 BST. Or if you can't wait until then, you can go to our YouTube channel and check out all the older episodes. Just once more, a massive thank you, everyone, for watching and sending in your great questions. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you again soon.